So today's lecture is on biology. Uh, Most of you are probably wondering, you're at a business school, why are you learning about biology? Uh, and we're going to answer that question, obviously, and it's actually extremely important for the rest of the course. I suspect some of you may not be interested in biology. Some of you may have been not good at biology or science in general. So you may be inclined to say, well, I'm going to half listen or I'm not going to listen. It's not so important. I want to learn about hard business strategies for innovation and so forth. So this is not so important for me. Now, that has two problems. One is on a sort of academic level. If you do that with classes, you can miss things and it may not be as good on your performance and so forth. So that's one thing. But the second reason why that's not a good attitude is that innovation is fundamentally about thinking outside the box and thinking in new ways. So if you have a mindset from the beginning that you don't really want to do this new way of thinking, then that could be a problem for your future in innovation. Now, that doesn't mean you have to learn everything that I say or anything else like that. And it may not mean that biology is the most important thing, for you, but a kind of attitude that I'm only going to learn what I think is right, and I'm not going to venture outside my comfort zone, is a very dangerous mindset to have if you're interested in innovation. And if you're not interested in innovation, that's fine. Then you just do what you are told to do. You do what you think you should do, and you don't think anything extra or anything outside. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But presumably, most of you are in this class because you're interested in innovation. And as I argued in the last lecture, innovation is extremely important. Companies succeed or fail on the basis of innovation. So it goes to saying that if you are interested in innovation, you should, from the beginning, have an open mind. So I'm teaching biology in this lecture for two reasons. One is the content is actually very important. And second, I know that many of you, maybe not all of you, but many of you are probably not interested in biology that much. Uh, and this is a way of forcing the issue about thinking outside the box. So each of you have to ask inside in your own personality, in your own being. I cannot tell you, if you really are capable or interested in thinking outside the box in fresh, new ways. That's the purpose of today's lecture, those two purposes. So let's start. So last week we talked about what is innovation, and in my lectures I also include a little bit of review from the previous week. So we'll review a little bit of that. I know that Elsa and perhaps others said that they could not make it, so we will have a little bit of review today. And I uploaded the lectures to LMS, so you'll see them there. And of course, today we'll be talking about innovation in biology, adaptation, and evolution. Now, just to summarize, what are the reasons to study biology in a business innovation course? The first one is to see examples of innovation. As we'll describe in the course, the best example of innovation in the history of the world, and when I say the world, I'm talking about billions of years, the best examples of innovation come out of biology. How do birds fly? How do people speak? How does language work? How do ants build their houses? How do cheetahs run so fast? How do camels survive in the desert? These are all innovative approaches to problems in the environment. There's no better example of innovation than the world of biology. So if you're doing a business and you want to do something innovative, and you want to get inspiration, you want to get ideas about innovation, you can sit at your desk and do your thing, or you can look in the whole wide world and get inspiration. And you'll see so many examples from the Steve Jobs to the Elon Musks. Maybe they keep it secret, but they see inspiration in the world around them and biology in particular to drive their business innovation. So that's number one. Number two, and this is extremely important, is that there are many books about innovation out there, and most of them are junk. They're just a whole bunch of things about innovation, and that's why I'm not focusing so much on the textbook. This is the textbook, the second textbook that I assigned is probably the best one out there. But in general, they're just very, huge number of cases, lots of blah, 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 etc. And there's no unifying framework, simple framework for innovation. So, in physics, you have Newton's laws, the three laws of motion. Newton's law number one is inertia. Newton's law number two is F equals ma. Newton's law number three is every action has a reaction. I'm not a physicist, but I've memorized that. It's very easy. And laws of electromagnetism, Maxwell's laws of electromagnetic waves. It's a little more complicated than Newton's laws, but they're four equations. So it's very easy to understand. Those four equations describe all of things from radios to smartphones to semiconductors to well, maybe not semiconductors as quantum mechanics, but many other things. And then if you go to quantum mechanics, you have Schrodinger's equation. One equation describes so many things. But in innovation, you need a fat book like this. And this is actually not a bad one, as I mentioned. You have all these books, and they don't have an equation for innovation. They don't have a simple framework for innovation. But evolutionary theory in biology represents, in my mind, the best framework, simple framework for innovation. And if you follow the principles of how evolution works to create all the innovation in biology, then you have a framework, a very easy framework, which you can put on one page for innovation. So that's the second reason why we study this. We are together going to develop this theory of innovation, or framework, I should say, of innovation. The third reason, which is what I talked about at the beginning, is to encourage out-of-the-box thinking, or to go out of the comfort zone. And I apologize if I assume that some of you are not interested in biology. I'm sure some of you are, but I'm pretty sure also that some of you are not. And those who are not in particular should be encouraged to think outside of the box. That is, aside from this theory of innovation I'm going to be presenting today, this framework for innovation, probably the most important thing for innovation is the mindset. If you don't have the mindset to be innovative, you can forget about it. You can read those thick books, you can read all the textbooks, and you're not going to be innovative, because innovation is not like accounting. It's not like finance. You don't plug in a number and get something out. You can't just pile on knowledge and get innovation. You sometimes see the most innovative people becoming or who don't have all the knowledge. Steve Jobs was not the most brilliant computer scientist. Elon Musk is not the most brilliant rocket scientist. They don't actually have a lot of the information and knowledge, but they have the mindset. And that's the other reason for this course and for this lecture in particular. The fourth reason is actually COVID. Obviously, COVID, the crisis we are experiencing now, is a problem in biology. It's about a virus. It's about the immune system, all these things in biology. So biology is obviously very current and important. And to survive this crisis individually, as companies, as societies, we need innovation to solve this problem. Now, some of that innovation is going to come directly out of biology. but some of the innovation is going to be other things, of course. But all of that comes together and it's intersecting with biology. So we cannot escape biology. We are living in it now in terms of COVID. And so these themes and these concepts will be very important. And then part two, we're going to talk about some more methods and applications, although technically today in the biology concepts, these frameworks that we'll be talking about, we'll be doing some of these methods as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have short projects, which are 60% of the grade. Now, these short projects will involve a written component as well as a presentation. Now, this is why I was concerned that if we have 60 students, presentations by everybody is going to be difficult. But we're going to do it and we'll figure out a way and be innovative, which will obviously mean that people will present for shorter times, which actually makes it more difficult. But then again, we have to accommodate this situation. So the short projects are first to develop the mindset of curiosity. As I said at the beginning, if you're not curious about biology, you probably shouldn't be in this course. Not because biology is important, but if you're not curious about new things, if you just want to stick in your own way and you're not curious about the world around you, innovation is not for you. It doesn't make you a bad person, but it's not going to make you an innovative person. So we want to develop this concept of curiosity, the same kind of curiosity that you might have had in kindergarten or first grade when you were a little kid. They often say the most innovators are like little children. So if you read this assignment, you'll say, I did that back when I was in first grade. I would see something and report about it, what I liked about it. But of course, we're going to do this at a higher level. So we're going to recreate this curious spirit. So we're going to do a very simple project on the surface. In other words, find a webinar outside your area of interest and report on it back to the class. But particularly what you found interesting and what you learned, not just reporting on it. Oh, I saw the seminar, he talked about XYZ, that's it. That would be like elementary school. No, we want to think, well, I learned about XYZ, but I can think about ABC. In an unrelated area. Try to think about how that curiosity can and create new ideas. So it's a little bit obviously more advanced. So it taps into the childlike curiosity, but develops an adult-like innovative mindset. That's the purpose of that project. So this one obviously will be 20% of the grade, with the written part being 10%, and then the presentation being the other 10%. And this is due on Friday, June 4th, and June 4th, we will have the presentations. We will go through all 60 students and somehow figure out, it will be probably 90 seconds presentation each. And it's very good practice for, in our virtual world for, quickly turning on the camera, quickly turning on your PowerPoint or whatever, and talking, being very efficient and getting the idea across in 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds. The second project is about observation. It will be due the following week, which is the second to last week of the class, June 11th. And to take a walk around and see some sort of observation. We talk about in this course all the great innovators, many of the great innovators, and they all have very keen powers of observation. So this too is a little bit like something you might have done as a child, and then as adults we lose that capability. So I'd like you to regain this observation, but in particular, in a more advanced way, to show what new knowledge the observation or what new ideas this observation could lead to. So if you see some birds and you see some birds making a nest, oh, that's very interesting. I observed that. But what could that bird nest making have implications for, housing, or what could it have implications for the design of a car, or who knows what? That's how innovation works. And then the third project is what I call passion, which is to make a suggestion about improving the online educational experience at Soulbridge with a very specific plan to make it real. So if you remember from last week's lecture, innovation was about making something real. So just having an idea is not enough. You should have some sort of a plan or process to make it real, whether it be development, marketing, promotion, partnerships, whatever is necessary that you imagine would make this new idea, this improvement, real. So this passion exercise, which is on the last day of class, leverages two aspects of innovation. One is the passion to change things, to make things better. And the second one is to actually have this concept of a real plan to execute or implement that new idea. So curiosity, observation, and passion are the main criteria for grading in this class, as manifested in the written part and in the presentation part. Any questions?
Professor.
Yes.
About the first one, curiosity attend a webinar. So I'm not pretty sure where am I able to like see the available webinars that are existing right now. So is there
Okay,
like
so that's a very good question. In education, particularly Korean education, the students only do what the professor assigns them. So you're expecting me to give you a list of webinars that you can look at and then report on.
no, not exactly. I'm
Okay,
not
good,
asking the
because
list.
that's not going to happen. Because this is an innovative class. And if I just tell you what to do, Korean education style, then what's the point? It's useless exercise. It's just there to make you do work and make me do work and show the university and your parents or who else that we did some work, but not to actually learn anything, especially about innovation. So that's a very good question, Garam, because I purposefully kept it vague. Why did I purposefully keep it vague? Because I want you to discover the webinar, figure out a way to get the webinar, and use your curiosity to do that. So this may be a little bit taptapeo, as we say in Korean, frustrating, but that's the purpose. I am not going to assign you. In fact, I know this might sound a little strange. If I do assign you a webinar, or somebody, anybody, a webinar, and that person does the assigned webinar, I will fail them. Why? Because they're not curious. It's a little bit strange, right? It's like the opposite of Korean education style. The professor failed me because I did what he assigned. So that's why I'm not going to assign anything, because I don't want to fail you, right? But that makes sense, because if you do what I assigned, and this is about curiosity, why should you pass? There's no success in that. It's the exact opposite. In fact, innovation is often the exact opposite of the what is supposed to be the right thing to do. So I'm very glad you asked that question. And I knew you didn't exactly mean what I implied, but I used your question as a mechanism to explain, what this is about. So you're not going to get any suggestions from me. You're going to use your own curiosity.
Professor, is is it okay to find the recording of webinar, not necessary webinar which is like online at the time of our
Yeah, I
observation?
mean, I think you can find a recording of the webinar. I think that's fine too. Yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be some live thing. Some of these webinars you have to pay for, so I'm not suggesting you pay for them. There's certainly lots of free ones out there. But I do, and this is a little bit of an honor system, I do want you to find a webinar in an area that you are not interested in, or I should say, not normally interested in. Try to go outside of your area. So for example, if you love to play video games 10 hours a day and you're a video game, god or goddess, and you're the best in video games, and you say, I want to watch a webinar on video games, that's not very useful. Now, I'm not going to, probably know that you're an expert in video games and you tricked me and you watched a webinar on video games, but that's your own problem. That's just validating that you're not innovative. And so maybe you'll pass the course, but you're not going to be innovative. So I trust you to find the webinar in an area that's outside your area of interest. There are not many opportunities for you to do that because life is very intense. You got to do what you're told to do. You have to do what you have to do. That's the way life is. And that's why most people don't innovate, because they're always doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to survive, right? We don't have a lot of opportunities to play around and just do something strange and different. This is your opportunity to do that. So if you choose a webinar in an area that you're already expert in, that's your own loss. You missed this opportunity to purposefully do something outside your area. So that's what's important to me. So in answer to Anastasia's question, recording or live, that's not so critical.
Okay, thank you.
Professor,
Yeah.
may I ask a question?
Yes.
So, is it okay if the webinar is not in English, but we still make this assignment in English after all? I
That's
mean,
a
like,
very good question. Now, to the extent that you want to be outside your comfort zone, and if English is not your main language, I think it's better that you do in English because it's a kind of way of going outside your comfort zone. If you go and see a webinar in your native language, it's a little bit less. I mean, it's the choice is up to you, basically. If you feel the topic is so unusual and different, but it's in your own native language, that's fine. Obviously, you have to present in English, and your written thing is in English for us. And I'm not going to fail or give you bad marks if you do it in your own language, the webinar. But my suggestion is, if you can, to try to do it in English. Just as this concept of being outside your box. But that's not the important thing. It's really up to you.
thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. It's funny. I'll obviously be grading you on your written thing. I'll be grading you on your presentation style and effectiveness and so forth. But ultimately, what you benefit from this will really be in your own hands. You see, so that's why I gave the example. If you do a webinar on a topic that you are completely familiar with and you did it very easily and very quickly, you could possibly get an A in that assignment from me. But on your side, since you didn't really do your curiosity, you will fail on your own side. You will trick the professor, but in the end, you will not benefit. So it's really up to you. And in fact, that's the whole idea of innovation. Innovation doesn't happen because your boss told you to be innovative. Innovation happens because you want to be innovative. And that's related to assignment number 3, as I mentioned, passion. Any other questions? Okay, so what I'd like to do is a little bit of review. The first thing I'm going to do actually is show you a short video. This video is from the Entrepreneurship World Cup. This was last year. One of the companies I work with called Flight won first place in the Entrepreneurship World Cup Canada. And we have a recording of that presentation. And I wanted to share that pitch with you because it's one of the best startup pitches you'll ever see. Of course, it's from my company. It's not me pitching, it's the CEO, but I think it's extremely good. And then Flight, the company that I'm going to show you, the one I'm working with, went to the world finals and came in second place in the world out of thousands of startups. So what you'll see is an example of one of the best startup pitches, because of course that's very important in business innovation. So let's start here. It's near the end. Okay, here we go. Can everyone hear the video?
Yes.
You heard for a short
Yes,
time?
professor.
Good.
I'm confident he's going to share something that we're excited about. It's my pleasure to welcome Dan from Flight Material Sciences to the virtual stage.
Sorry about that.
$67. You can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy.
What happened here?
Hello, everybody. Are we coming through?
We can see you, and if you go into full screen mode, you'll be set. Perfect. Looks great.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It's one thing to have a hard act to follow. It's another to have 8 hard acts to follow. But I'll do my best to keep you awake for this last one and get you home on time. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Cohen, the founder of Flight Material Sciences, and it's a privilege to present to the Entrepreneurship World Cup tonight. Back in 2017, I was the head of a solar structures company, and we were looking for a way to keep snow and ice and frost and other agents off of solar panels, and didn't really find what I was looking for in the coatings market or the research market, but we did find this, and it's changed my life and the lives of others now. So Flight Material Science is for industrial products that we depend on. Now, when we depend on these products, every aspect of our daily life, and when their surfaces are affected by rust and fouling and ice, they fail. So we have a radical new treatment to protect all industrial materials using clean lasers instead of toxic coatings. And this technique will protect human life, reduce environmental damage, and improve the safety and performance of products. So let's get into the details. I'd like to teach you about this technology in under 1 minute. This is the surface of stainless steel. And when it's magnified, you can see that its natural texture is rough and random. And when coatings are applied, they eventually fail, leaving the surface vulnerable and scattering toxic residue into the air and water. Our patented pulse technique sculpts a new texture that has a specific function. And this functional texture is one that repels water. We can also make textures that repel oil or attract liquids to the surface. This is all called laser surface functionalization. This is what superhydrophobic metal looks like up close. Liquids don't just run off, but they bounce off the surface and they take anything alongside with it like dust or debris. And if water can't stay on the surface, ice can't hold there, and rust doesn't form there, and bacteria won't grow there. So you might think that nanostructures seem fragile, but we've put these results through very harsh testing, and we are ready to face the industrial challenges that our customers have. So we've got an extensive list of opportunities that were validated by technical experts in each sector, reducing the 150 million liters of glycol in aircraft de-icing, to getting a 20% increase in solar energy, making better cardiac stents, and much more. So after living with the risk and loss and damage associated with coatings for decades, our customers are thrilled to try something new. And each of these problem areas is attached to a multi-billion-dollar industry, ready for disruption and hungry for real change. So in the $100 billion coatings market, there's a $2 billion niche with many new products that offer superhydrophobic benefits. These are our competitors, but we are not a coating. Our patented technique has the benefits of the best of these coatings with none of the downside. None of our competitors can sustain years of exposure to sun or rain or salt water in the harsh environments of aviation and space, or in the vulnerable spaces of the human body. Our team has more than 100 years of experience in early stage technology in clean tech and medical and university tech transfer. We're now a team of 6 with an advisory board, and we're adding experts with deep industry background. We have an effective balance of personalities, nationalities, and perspective here. This work has yielded a collection of published papers and patents and a tremendous amount of press coverage. We're the proud graduates of innovation groups from around North America, and our first customers come from across the industry sectors to solve a problem that coatings have not solved. So we've got a promising future, a deep pipeline of global 1,000 customers waiting for us, and our network and innovation has provided the rest of the traction. And we've barely begun to sell, but we've got millions in pipeline lined up. And as we advance, the average client will provide 5 to 15 years of recurring revenue at a margin of 80 to 90% with a strong chance of renewal. So at Flight, we envision a world where drinking water comes through clean pipes, and our ships sail through the ocean without poisoning the water, and everyday surfaces don't hold dangerous pathogens. This isn't a technology that makes a company, it's something that creates a whole industry. So with your support, we'll expand our mission of making everyday materials extraordinary. Thank you.
Dan, thank you so much for introducing us to Flight and really.
Okay. So that was the Flight presentation. As I mentioned, it became first place in Canada. The company is based in Montreal. And then it ended up, the Dubai was the World Championships, and it ended up in first place, and obviously many other awards and so forth. But I thought that would be a good example of a very good presentation, just from a practical sense. But if you notice some things, Dan was talking about how he was in solar panels, and he observed the ice on the solar panels and the coatings, and it didn't seem, very successful. So he was observing, and then he was curious about other methods, which was, of course, the laser surface patterning or laser surface functionalization. And then he was passionate about implementing that. So he created the company and so on and so forth. So those elements of curiosity, observation, passion are very evident here. In addition, of course, to the basic mechanics of giving a very good presentation, which is also very important. So in this course, I want to share with you not just the mechanics of how to give good presentation and a bunch of case examples from the textbook and so forth about successful companies. I want by the end of the course to have a kind of mindset that it will serve you in your personal and professional careers, individually, and your companies wherever you work in the future. That's the purpose of this course.
Exciting work.
So we had a short assignment. We don't have a lot of time to go over that. So not obviously 60 people. So I'll just ask a couple people to share with me their example of innovation in biology. Anybody want to start?
Professor, may I ask one small question to the pitch previously?
Yes, okay.
Okay, so are you providing your customers with the technology, or do you provide the material as well? Because he said that they have like profit margins of roughly 80 to 90%, which is phenomenal.
Yes, so we don't actually provide, the surfaces and the materials. Let's say we're working with an oil and gas pipe. We don't provide the pipes. The oil and gas company or the supplier makes the pipes. We provide the license and the capability to bring the laser to the field or to the factory and make the surface. So we will contract with the laser company, and basically the 80% margin is based on the licensing and the ability to use that technology. So it's not, that's a very good question, because we're not providing the pipes, or in the case of a spaceship, we're not obviously building the spaceship. We're just providing uh, uh, the license and the technology capability to then make that surface. So we put together the laser company, we put together the final product company, and we provide the instructions and the kind of know-how and the technique and the proprietary intellectual property to make that surface according to the customer needs. So that's why it's at 80%. I mean, the same thing with Bill Gates and the operating system. The operating system was basically just digital code, and in the beginning it used to be on disks. Now it just goes to the internet, and his profit margins were 80%, whatever, because he didn't have to make anything. IBM and all the computer people made the computers, and they just put the code in there. So it's a kind of software in a way. It's not software, of course. It's intellectual property that we share, so that the end customer who's making these things, or their suppliers are making these things, have a better surface on whatever they're doing. Does it answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much.
And you're right. If we were to actually make all these things, I mean, 80% would be a little bit strange, but that's not what we do. Okay, give an example of innovation in biology. Who wants to start?
Can I, teacher?
Okay.
Yeah, so the first example that came to my mind was the example of COVID vaccine.
Okay.
Yes, and after that, in the pharmaceutical industry, I figured that penicillin, codeine, these painkillers are basically examples of innovations as well. That's what I think.
Okay. So that's a good answer, but in a way, it's the wrong answer.
Okay.
Now, I'm not criticizing you. I'm not grading this.
Yeah.
This is, in a sense, when you do these assignments, it's kind of part of the attendance, these short
Oh,
assignments.
okay.
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 So this is extremely important, because I don't want this to be about the right answer or the wrong answer, because innovation is often not about right and wrong, especially, in fact, many of the things in innovation are wrong because they are outside the convention. If this was a accounting class and you got it wrong, that's a problem, right? But if it's in an innovation class, you got it wrong, that could actually be a good thing. So, don't take offense.
Fair
The
enough.
answer is a
Okay.
wrong answer, and I'll tell you why. Is I don't want people to be looking at biotechnology innovation. In other words,
Okay.
and this is a very good example, because you kind of had your business mind. You said, okay, professor asked about biology, so I'm going to look at biology business. So vaccine, penicillin, all that. What I'm
Yeah.
looking at is, what made the dinosaurs successful?
Okay.
Okay. How does a
Yeah.
bird fly? These are not businesses. These are not
Yeah.
products. In fact, they may not even, obviously, dinosaurs don't exist, and they were successful for
Uh,
a time, and they were wiped out. Why did they get wiped out? Why were they
I
so
get it.
successful, etc.? So I'm looking for innovation in biology.
So I guess the aerodynamic shape of the birds are an example of innovation?
Yes, but there are of course many
Yeah.
different shapes. So
Yeah.
so I know you just came the answer top of your head, so
Yeah.
I can't expect anything more. But the point is, you want to have that initial amazement, but then maybe describe some detail around that. That would
Mm,
have been a good
okay.
answer. So anybody
Okay.
else has an answer? Thank you very much, Amjad.
Gene
Yeah.
manipulation
Tayal,
or gene theory.
say it again.
Gene theory or gene manipulation, we can say.
Okay, gene manipulation. So that's the same thing as what Amjad said. That's a kind of innovation in the business of biology, gene manipulation. I'm interested in innovation in biology, how plants and animals had innovative solutions. Like I mentioned, the camel in the desert. How does it live for long without water? There's no business around that. The camel is not Google doesn't make camels. Siemens doesn't make camels. Camels, they exist, right? They come out of nature. So I'm interested in the innovation in nature.
May I say something?
Yeah, Julia.
So one example could be the neck of the giraffe. So which is like based on Darwin's theory, so that they adapted like to, well, like the stronger population was dominant. I don't know how to say it in English, but yeah, maybe that would be an example.
Yeah, so the neck is so long, but what's interesting about the giraffe neck is not why the neck is so long, at least to me, what's interesting, but how it can pump the blood up to the head from so high or from so low, whatever. What's the innovation in its heart and its blood vessels? So that's very interesting. And that's actually an interesting problem that biologists have studied because that has a lot of implications for pumping and for fluid distribution in systems, and might have implications for air conditioning and water supply. That's where we get a lot of these ideas. So yes, the giraffe's neck is very interesting, and it actually has a lot of innovations related to that. Let's have one more example, and then we'll go to continue.
Can I
Can
try?
I try, Professor?
Hansen,
Yeah.
what do you say?
Well, I had an example of whales.
Okay, whales, great.
Because they had this big scale, they were so big that first of all, it was the survival of the fittest adaptation. And first they went from being a fish-like creature, went to go on land, and then because of survival, they went back to the sea, which is also like an interesting look
Yes,
at
that's
life.
right.
Yeah, but more in the sense of innovation. They are so big, so apparently cancer cells aren't as effective on them, which could be like an interesting look for the future, or for like innovation in ways like why aren't
Yes.
cancer actually killing whales? And apparently because cancer get cancer, and that's why they don't die from cancer, something like that.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah. So whales somehow are resistant to cancer. I also, another interesting fact in biology is sharks can live to hundreds of years old. What is it about sharks that they can live for so long? And those innovative solutions in the biology maybe can inform the business side of anti-aging, for humans as a business. So of course, I was a little bit critical. There's often a connection between innovation in nature and the innovation that occurs in biology. So for example, Tayal was mentioning about gene manipulation. And I said, well, that's not really the right answer because I'm not interested in the business side. But indeed, there is some gene manipulation that occurs in nature. And in fact, the PCR test is a form of gene manipulation. PCR test, polymerase chain reaction, and it copies the RNA from the virus and amplifies it so then we can detect it. And that's how we test on the PCR test. So it's a kind of gene manipulation that has been adapted with a very powerful business application, but that came from biology. And it's called a Taq polymerase enzyme was discovered. And then they use that in this gene, or I should say RNA testing kit. It's called PCR. Many of you may not be familiar with what that is, PCR. It's actually based on nature biology. And they, of course, package it and use it in a business setting. So there is actually, to be fair, a connection between the nature innovation and the business innovation. But I was asking about the nature innovation because that becomes first. And we build business on that, whether it be because of the whale, whether it be the gene manipulation, what Amjad mentioned about penicillin. You know, the observation of penicillin was based on molds were killing bacteria. And Alexander Fleming noticed that. Remember, observation. He became Nobel Prize winner and the great innovation because he was observing. Simple. Assignment number 2, you may say, well, that's not really very fancy. I can do that assignment. But people get Nobel Prizes, people become billionaires based on their powers of observation. So that simple assignment that I gave you that you might say, well, it's not a big deal. It's not like a problem set in accounting or something. That could be the most important assignment in your life. Because if 10 years from now you come up with an observation like that, and you can, you know, if you are developing your observation skills, you can go back to that assignment and say, oh, Professor Gurel helped me get Nobel Prize. Maybe someday you'll thank me. I'm joking, of course, but that's the whole idea. Penicillin didn't just get invented because the guy was working hard. He was observing very hard. Okay, we have some people raising hands. Nuhalia.
Yes, Professor. Professor, I just want to share with you my example. It was the
Okay.
plant-based burger. Actually,
Oh, plant-based burger.
Yeah, it is just like a plant-based meat that tastes just like hamburger meat, and they start using it instead of using meat. So because it has the same calorie and protein as meat.
Okay, so that was another business example in biology. So it looks like most of you, and I looked at some of the written assignments, of course, most of you were focusing on the business side, but I really trying to go back to nature. Last one, Garam. Bek Garam.
I just want to clarify if my example is business related or nature related. So my example is about like the technology, like for the facial recognition for fishes. Is that, can I speak more about it, or is it not a relevant example?
So please explain. What do you mean?
So right now, like conservancy scientists, like the managers and conservancy scientists for the maintenance of the fisheries around the world, like they developed a something called fish face recognition system. So it basically observes, it helps also not the fishermen's, but it also helps themselves to identify all the fishes that are being caught right now currently. So basically, it is weird in the sense that they're using technology to recognize the face of the fish, but
yes,
they use the same computer applications of identifying people, usually often which are used in identifying crimes, like for yeah. So they're using this to to think of to get a more accurate data for all the fishes that are being caught right now around the world, and they can use this information to develop their supply chain or sustainable to conserve the environment of the fishes and species.
Interesting. Okay, well, it's a little bit more of a business thing. I'm trying to look up something.
Professor,
Yeah.
if like, can this be an example? Like, if mermaids weren't a myth and what actually existed, like they were human beings that went underwater for living, right?
Yes,
And they
mermaids.
developed.
Yeah, but I don't think they existed.
No, I saw a documentary like they had some skeletons out of and like it was actually showing that mermaids actually existed and stuff, and they had developed many things due to living underwater.
Yeah. Okay, I'm actually looking up something here.
Professor,
Yeah.
so is it like pure biology, like where maybe uh, chameleons do change their colors due to their surroundings?
That's a great example. Yes.
And also maybe squids who um, do their ink think when they're in danger, where they spray their inks to other animals
Yeah,
during their
that's another good example.
Oh, so everything that is pure biology, I mean, like where God gives to them as their plus side.
Yeah, those are interesting. So let me actually show you very quickly here. This is a paper I wrote when I was at Samsung, computationally efficient real-time motion recognition based on bio-inspired visual and cognitive processing. So this was about basically artificial intelligence to detect motion and facial recognition, things like that. But it was based on how the eye works, which is different than how computers work. In a smartphone, you have a camera and then you have the CPU. The camera basically picks up the light and transmit the pixels to the CPU, and the CPU processes it. But that's not how the eye works. The eye is not a camera that sends pixels back to the brain. The eye itself is a computational unit that is doing some calculations already. And what's sent to the brain is not the pixels, but a processed image. And so we use this concept to improve real time meaning very fast, motion recognition, not done by the CPU, but by the camera. And the camera sending a pre-processed image of sorts to the CPU. And this is how the eye works. And that's why the eye can be so fast, and not just the eye, but the whole visual system, I should say, can be so fast. So we use this concept of bio-inspired. So we're going to take a break soon, and I'm going to show you one more video, and then we'll take the break. Please listen.
In 1989, Japan's Shinkansen bullet train had a problem. It was fast, really fast, like pushing 170 miles per hour fast. But every time it exited a tunnel, it was loud. The noise was coming from a variety of sources, but whenever a train sped into a tunnel, it pushed waves of atmospheric pressure through the other end. The air exited tunnels with a sonic boom that could be heard 400 meters away. In dense residential areas, that was a huge problem. So an engineering team was brought in to design a quieter, faster, and more efficient train. And they had one secret weapon. Eiji Nakatsu, the general manager of the technical development department, was a bird watcher.
Different components of the redesigned bullet train were based on different birds. Owls inspired the pantograph. That's the rig that connects the train to the electric wires above. Nakatsu modeled the redesign after their feathers, reducing noise by using the same serrations and curvature that allow them to silently swoop down to catch prey. The Adelie penguin, whose smooth body allows it to swim and slide effortlessly, inspired the pantograph's supporting shaft, redesigned for lower wind resistance. And perhaps most notable of all was the kingfisher.
The kingfisher is a bird that dives into water to catch its prey. The unique shape of its beak allows it to do that while barely making a splash. Nakatsu took that shape to the design table. The team shot bullets shaped like different train nose models down a pipe to measure pressure waves and dropped them into water to measure the splash size. The quietest nose design was the one modeled most closely after the kingfisher's beak. When the redesign debuted in 1997, it was 10% faster, used 15% less electricity, and stayed under the 70 decibel noise limit in residential areas. And it did all that with the wings of an owl, the belly of a penguin, and the nose of a kingfisher. There's a name for design like this. It's called biomimicry.
The people who design our world usually never take a biology class, believe it or not. So they're novices in how the world works.
That's Janine Benyus. Back in 1997, she wrote the book that coined the term biomimicry. It told the story of the innovations in computing, energy, and health that were inspired by structures in the natural world.
Stick like a gecko, compute like a cell, even run a business like a redwood forest.
Benyus has since worked as a consultant for various companies, trying to get them to understand how to take design ideas from nature. That might mean studying prairie dog burrows to build better air ventilation systems, mimicking shark skin to create bacteria-resistant plastic surfaces for hospitals, or arranging wind turbines in the same drag-reducing pattern that schools of fish swim in. Designers get inspiration from a lot of different places, but Benyus thinks many of them could benefit from looking more at the natural world.
So there's a lot of sort of looking at what other people have done, and what they do is they look at all the others and they get ideas. They literally do, you know, a lot of designers have lots of magazines that they look through. They tear those out and they put them on inspiration boards. But they're looking at other human technologies.
Her idea was simple. Designers should get in the habit of bringing a biologist to the table and let them help solve problems by mimicking nature. And there are three main ways they can do that.
You know, you can mimic its form or its shape. You might create a paint for a building that when it dries, it's got the same structure as self-cleaning leaves. Lotus leaves are notoriously great. They let rainwater clean the leaf because they have these bumps, and the rainwater balls up on the bumps and then it pearls away the dirt. So that lotus effect is physical, and you can create a physical structure on the outside of any product. Imagine that on the outside of your car. Rainwater would clean your car. So that's mimicking form. But there's also mimicking process, the processes in the natural world. It might even be, you know, how you mimic how ants communicate in order to efficiently find sources of food or new places to live. And those processes, that self-organization, has been mimicked in software. You know, in things like autonomous cars and how they're going to move in flocks through the city by talking to one another. That's mimicking nature's process. And then you jump up to the level of mimicking whole ecosystems, right? There's a thing that's a buzzword right now that's really hot called the circular economy, which is essentially, you know, industry saying, you know, there should be no such thing as a byproduct in our manufacturing facility that goes to landfill. It should be used by something else, right? And at the end of a product's life, that product should be upcycled into something else. It's being called the circular economy. Ecosystems do that really, really, really well. You've got a log on the forest floor, and those materials move up into the body of the fungus that eats it. Those materials move up into a mouse. And that mouse material moves up into a hawk, right? And if you think about that as what we'd like to do with local materials being upcycled constantly in our cities, for instance, those ecosystem lessons are really big for us.
And that's the end goal for biomimetic design, making products, systems, and cities functionally indistinguishable from the natural world. Life has been around on Earth for 3.8 billion years, and what designers are starting to realize is that is a lot of research and development time.
The people who design our world have a lot to learn from the natural world. All they have to do is take a look.
Thank you so much for watching. This is one of a series.
Okay, so the video was directed to designers in a way. I think that was a little bit unfortunate because it's actually for everybody, people creating business, you know, everybody's designing something. So there's not just designers, but business people, business students. In other words, you, I think can benefit from this concept. And that's what we're going to explore in the rest of this lecture. We're going to take a break. I'll start with a little review after the break from the previous lecture, which I always do. And then we will go into the main part of the lecture after the break. It is now 10:15. So we will start at 10:30. We will return at 10:30.